Thank you. Welcome to the December 16th Winnacunnet School Board meeting. And I'll be reading a checklist to ensure the meetings are compliant with the right to know law during the state of emergency. As the chair of the Winnacunnet School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to the executive order 20-4, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for the electronic meeting. All members of the Winnacunnet School Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through this platform. And the public has access continuously to listen to, if necessary, participate in this meeting by dialing the following phone number: 646-876-9923. And the webinar is 912-392-9528. Or clicking on the following website address, us02web.zoom.us /J/91239299528. And B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. And we previously have given notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access utilizing Zoom or telephonically. Instructions are also provided on the website of SAU 21 office at www.sau21.org. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there's any problems in accessing. If anyone has a problem, please call 603-926-8992, extension 103, or emailing revans@sau21.org. Also, D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting will be done by roll call vote. So at this time, may we have a roll call, Rhonda?
Heidi Terracina.
I am here and I do have family in and out.
Henry Marsh.
Here and family in and out.
Leslie LaFond.
Here alone.
Mike Rabideau.
Here and family in and out.
And Tony Delano.
Here and family in and out.
I have the roll call taken.
Thank you.
No, we can't, Nick. There's no way. I am not gonna.
Get to the okay. Is there a motion on the minutes of November 18th? But before we have the minutes, I want to apologize for not being in attendance at that meeting. And I just want to apologize. And is there a motion to accept the minutes of the November 18th meeting?
I'll make that motion to accept the November 18th meeting minutes.
Thank you.
And it's great to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Glad
Tony.
you're back, Henry. Glad you're back.
Thank you. Okay, may I have a roll call of to accept the minutes?
Heidi Terracina.
Yes.
Henry Marsh.
Yes. Oh, excuse me. I was not in attendance.
So I'll have you abstain.
Yes. Thank you.
Leslie LaFond.
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes?
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. But before we go to continuing business, I'd like to make a statement. And can I say this? Honestly, with heavy heart, I had a long conversation with Dr. Lupini this afternoon, and I want to thank you for that meeting as well. This is Dr. Lupini's last meeting with the WHS School Board. We would like to thank him for his dedication to the SAU 21. And actually, Mike and I both met with Dr. Lupini on Monday at his exit interview. And he was still outlining to the board chairs some of his initiatives to create and make a better board and SAU, and also with staffing. He has been a tireless worker and just a consummate administrator, and to my knowledge has never missed a WHS school board meeting, budget hearings. And as a board, we wish you well in your next adventure. And thank you for everything that you've done, Bill, or Dr. Lupini, I'm sorry.
Bill is more than fine, Henry. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Very, very kind.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lupini.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we've been waiting for this next thing for a long time. And I had put this up a few moments ago, was the in-person reopening plan. And in talking to Mr. McGowan, and also a long conversation this afternoon with Dr. Lupini, who's been tirelessly working with the administration at the high school. I understand for the last 5 days as to put forth to the board and to the public a plan for in-person reopening. And Bill would, Mr. McGowan, would you like to put this up, please? The reopening plan?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay, so I hope everybody can see it. I just want to thank everybody, the administration, the SAU administration, and the teachers, and the parents that have provided input over the last several weeks. We understand that's been difficult, but again, with the feedback that we received and the work that we've done, we feel that this plan will get our students back into the building and is a good plan. And we're looking forward to presenting this tonight and receiving any feedback, and we make any adjustments as we need. And the goal is, as I said before, is to open as quickly and safely as possible. We're going to take a look at the community transmission, the students' risk and well-being, and provide educational opportunities for each and all students. So the overview of this model is that in-person students will be in the building 2 to 3 days per week. Every 2 days, students will rotate in. So at a minimum, it's going to be 2 days. In some weeks, based on the schedule, they'll be in school for 3 days a week. The in-person learning will include different activities. It'll include direct instruction, lectures, assessments, discussions, presentations, and labs. Also, students that will be at home will be learning from home when they're not in person or if they're fully remote. In this case, the students can participate in real-time synchronous classroom instruction, or on some days they may have to complete independent practice activities that are going to be assigned by the teacher. But under this schedule, teachers will be able to continue to provide daily learning opportunities to all students. So the lessons are going to be either synchronous or independent. The synchronous learning, instruction and class activities will be conducted for all students during the scheduled class time, with some students in the classroom in person, and also there may be a live broadcast available to the students at home so they can also access the lesson. There will be days when it's going to be independent learning, and that independent learning may happen in classroom and or at home. They'll have self-directed work during the scheduled class time. Students at home can complete that work offline, and it may include physical activities, independent reading. Offline learning will provide the students an opportunity to independently practice newly learned skills. The students will still be divided into two cohorts. And again, it's based on the last name, A through L and M through Z. And the students will have 2 consecutive days in a row and 2 consecutive days out of the building. And this will continue daily throughout the trimester. So for example, on A through L will be in person for an A day and a B day. And while those A through L students are in person, M through Z will remotely engage in those classes. The following 2 days for M through Z will follow an A day and a B day. And during that time, the A through L students will engage remotely. Students who are remote will be expected to participate in class daily during the scheduled class time. This will include check-in. They may be watching lessons, complete assignments during the class period. The bell schedule is still going to be the same, 7:30 to 2:30. Classes will begin at 8 o'clock, and we have still maintained the office hours, and they'll be held from 1:40 to 2:30, and they'll be open to all students. Teachers will be in the building with students every day. Attendance will be taken daily for the classes for those students in person and for those students who are remote. We'll have buses at the end of the scheduled day, and we will also have a late bus for the office hours. The schedule is minimal impacted to students that attend SST, and the schedule maintains the current schedule cycle, the AB day. This will keep consistency, and we also heard back from the students, actually from the teachers, that the 3 blocks per day is very beneficial. Also, we've maintained Warrior Block to function as additional support for students during that time. So this is the schedule. Again, the morning prep time will be from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. And either on the red day, we'll attend blocks 3, 4, 5, or on the blue day, students will attend blocks 1, 2, 6. There will be a lunch period built in, and that lunch period will be cycled with Warrior Block. It will continue to be 75 minutes in length. There'll be a passing time between the classes, and we will have students attend lunch based on their grade level. And when they are not in lunch, they will be in Warrior Block, receiving additional support and working independently. And then at the end, we do have the office hours. This is the cycle. It's a 20-day cycle. And as you can see, on the first 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, we have A through L in person. And on these 2 days, M through Z will be remote. The next 2 days, M through Z will be in person, A through L will be remote. And then that cycle continues 2 days in, 2 days out. But because it's a 5-day week, that over the period of time, on some days, A through L will be in the building 3 days a week. For example, here this first week, where M through Z will be in the building during a subsequent week. So what are the expectations for students? They will be required to attend the class daily during the scheduled time. They will have to log into the Google Classroom and complete all assignments. Communicate with the teachers, any needs that they have for the remote learning days, and come into the building on the assigned days. In the building, follow all safety protocols, and on the home days, engage in the remote learning, following the bell schedule. The parents, when the students are in the building, it's critical that the students or the parents complete the Pickup Patrol app. Ensure that the students come to school on the assigned days. If the student's going to be sick, call us and let us know. And even if they're sick, if they can, we want them to participate in the remote learning. If they can't come to the building, please communicate with us any concerns or issues and work with the students to support the daily engagement, especially on the days that they are not in the building. Teachers will take attendance daily in Power School. And again, this is for both the in-person and the students that will be remote that day. And then all classes will start synchronously with the in-person and remote students. Teachers will take the attendance, greet the students, and then outline what that daily lesson would be. Now, based on that lesson, teachers will conduct lessons that are best suited for the class, and this will accommodate both the in-person and remote students. And on different days, this will likely include a combination of synchronous and independent work. All classes will then end synchronously, where the students in person and remote will be back together. The teacher will just review the day and close the lesson and set up what would happen the following day. All assignments for the day will be posted in Google Classroom. Grades and assignments will be recorded in Power School. What we found is that using the Google Classroom, teachers were recording the grades in the Google Classroom and sometimes not getting them into Power School regularly. And we'll make sure that the grades are updated. The administration, including myself, we will need to provide assistance and support to all students, families, teachers, and the staff. We need to make sure that all the safety protocols are in place and are followed. Communicate with the students and families any concerns regarding the student well-being, and we'll be working with the guidance staff to do this. Support teachers and staff with the hybrid instruction, and then communicate regularly by updates to all teachers, staff, and students regarding the reopening process. We will be creating a link on the website that will cover all the information that I'm presenting tonight and updates as we move along. When students come into the building, pickup patrol should be completed and must be completed, but we know sometimes students will forget to do that, so we will have a checkpoint at 3 entrances that we will staff by nurses and administrators, and we'll have real-time access to the Pickup Patrol app, so we will be able to see who has completed the screening and who has not. If the student has not completed the screening, we will screen the student at the door before they can enter the building. And we will have 3 entrances to the building where we do the screening: the main entrance, the auditorium entrance, and also the dining hall entrance. We also realize that if a student has class in the gym or tech ed building, we'll provide that screening to the pickup patrol. If they haven't completed the pickup patrol, they will have to come up to the main building for that screening. In the building, masks need to be worn at all times. And, previously when we've had students in the building, that was not an issue. Students clearly complied with that. No eating or drinking in the classrooms. Again, when students come into the building throughout the day, only 2 students can be in the front office at a time. And we ask all students and everybody in the building to maintain social distancing. And then hallways will be one way, and we'll have arrows and signs throughout indicating the direction. Cleaning, we will follow all protocols by CDC and the DHHS. We have hand sanitizer stations in all rooms, and we have them mounted in several locations throughout the building. We'll have signs throughout the building to remind everybody. We have adjusted the HVAC airflow to provide increased airflow throughout the building during the day. We also will be flushing the school completely twice a day during school hours. Restrooms will be cleaned regularly throughout the day. In classrooms, we'll have a sanitizing cycle. All classrooms will be provided with a full spray bottle of disinfectant along with cleaning rags. And we also have several handheld electrostatic sprayers that we can use to quickly clean the rooms and disinfect the rooms. And, if we do have a situation where a student has symptoms, if they're in the building, they will be sent to the health office. The nurses will determine if they need to be dismissed. And then, they will work closely, and they have been working closely with DHHS as far as the protocols and procedures. And based on the situation, we may have to send that student home. We will have an area in the building, a quarantine area, isolation area in the building, if that student needs to go home before they go home and get picked up. And then for that student to come back in the building, we have to have a negative test. But if the test is positive, we will follow all procedures that we receive from DHHS as far as the contact tracing, find out what the extent of that will be. And again, if a student is in quarantine isolation, they will still be able to participate in the remote instruction. Lunch, we will be serving lunch. And again, it's going to be aligned with Warrior Block. We have plexiglass dividers that we have on all the dining hall tables. Allow only 4 students to sit at the table. The tables will be spaced at least 6 feet apart, and the tables will be wiped down by the food service workers in between the lunch period. The plan is to implement the schedule January 11th, 1 week after we go to school. So when we come back Monday and January 4th, we'll continue the remote schedule. And then on January 11th, we will implement the hybrid learning schedule. And some of the questions that we've been asked, and we'll continue updating this list and have this on the website. Again, the first day will be Monday, January 11th. April will come into that building on those first 2 days. Attendance will be taken for all students, whether they're remote or in person. We will continue to grade using the traditional grading system. And office hours will be held daily. Students can schedule time with Warrior Block. And if a student needs to stay at the school, there's also that opportunity. That concludes the presentation.
So, Mr. Marsh, before you go to board questions, because I know you're gonna do that next, I just want to tell you there's a couple other pieces here separate from this, so I don't want to bring them up now. But there is an issue we've been asked about that I know we provided the board with some material on in writing about a step that the Hampton schools took with respect to next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that I can address for the board. And I believe that Mr. McGowan has invited Mr. Abood here to outline some of the protocols around winter sports as well. Those are separate issues, but I want to make sure you understand that we have those pieces that I know board members may want to ask questions about, that the public may also be interested in before you start through your questions on the presentation. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I want to thank you for getting this to us. Where this is a board meeting, I'd like to present a motion that we accept this, because I don't want this to go on and on and on for months if we don't accept it. And the other is to move that the board directs the Winnacunnet High School administration to present a plan for the full reopening of the school at the January meeting, so that the administrative staff, students, and parents can be prepared to implement such a plan at a time when the board deems it's appropriate. Is there a second? And then we can discuss the whole thing. I guess there's no second to that motion.
Henry,
Yes.
could you just say those again, please?
Okay, initially it was to move that we accept Mr. McGowan's recommendation initially. All this is to move it so that we're not waiting months and months for, if we don't accept it, are we going to wait till the next month for some other plan? Also, that we're directing the administration to come up with a full plan at our January board meeting for the full reopening of the school at some point that the board decides that it's time to open the school. But hearing none, we can go to discussion.
Do you want the motion seconded before we have discussion? Is that what you're asking?
Well,
And
if that's what people want, if not, we can just have a discussion and then move on. But, Dr. Lupini, Mr. McGowan and the whole administrative have been working on this for a long time. And if this is the presentation, are we going to wait till next month to do something different than we're doing presently? I'm just throwing my hands up because everybody is trying to work on a plan. And if there's no support, then we'll just go to a discussion phase.
Well, I have a question.
Thank you.
The board members just received this afternoon, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
And have any of the board members seen this plan prior to that?
Not that I know of.
Not reviewed it with,
I haven't seen it.
not reviewed it with the principal or anything like that? Okay,
No.
all right.
So where do we do? Where do we go from here? My plan is that we got to move on. We can't. I don't know.
Henry, are you asking us to, I don't understand the first motion, I have to say. I understand
Okay.
the second motion because I would have made that same motion myself.
Okay.
So I second the second motion.
Thank you,
I
sir.
need that.
But
Definitely.
the first one is so that we come into a discussion phase of the plan. And if we don't, we're going to wait another month.
Well, Henry, can I just add to what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yep. I'm just trying, sir. I'm
No,
sorry.
I understand what you're doing. I just want to clarify. So you have a plan that you adopted in a November meeting.
Correct.
We did not implement phase one of that plan because of the indicators, agree or disagree that I indicated when I sent out a letter. So you still have a plan, right? It had a phase one, it had a phase two that went into place in January. It is not as robust as this plan. So you have a plan that if this were not to be adopted, you have a plan in place for January that is not as many days in as this plan. So hopefully that adds a little clarification to what Mr. Marsh is trying to say by saying, will the board adopt this plan? Because again, you have a plan that I think started out with 1 day per week and in early January went to 2. This is a more robust plan than that.
Right.
And that's the high school administrations looked at their plan and seen that they can add more days in for students in this manner. And that's why they brought this recommendation. The part that I thought, Mr. McGowan, that you were going to talk about some tonight was the potential opportunity for some remote classes for students who have chosen to stay remote, so that those students would actually have some classes that would be only remote. We know that we have about, I think Mr. McGowan has found in his surveys, about 25% of the student body, more in senior year than in 9th grade, but about 25% across the high school that are choosing to stay remote. Okay, those numbers are up over other surveys we've done, but that's what the number is. And so one of the things that they went back and looked at is, given that number, were there some classes, for example, a freshman English, where you could create a section of freshman English that would be remote? right?
Correct.
And obviously at 25%, there are those opportunities. And I know they're still working on how many of those opportunities exist and how they can be sort of carved out and rebuilt into the schedule. That's a lot of handwork. But that's a, I won't even say possibility, it's a probability, if I'm correct.
And again, I mean, I was going to mention that, thank you for reminding me. So yes, what we're doing, and we've been able to identify some classes during the day that we can reschedule teachers so that a teacher will be teaching, one of their assigned teaching sessions would be for those remote students, and then they would have the other assigned teaching sessions for the in-person classes. So that's one thing that we're doing. In some of the other cases where we don't have the ability to reschedule a teacher, we will be putting out to teachers an opportunity for them to additionally teach another section for those remote students. And then the third thing that we're going to put together is for each block, put together a team based on teacher's schedule, a team of 4 teachers, an English teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher, and a social studies teacher, that they will be available during each block to work with those remote students that we could not provide a separate remote section for. And then there's also the warrior block that we can also connect with students. Students have the opportunity to do that, and then the office hours too. So we do recognize that, you know, some students will not be in the building, but we need to make sure that they are able to maintain the instructional integrity of those students that do come in on those days.
I think Leslie has,
I just have a question, I think a comment more about the 25% that want to stay remote. I think, yeah, that's the number, but I have wasn't it also staying remote with the original plan that we had presented last month with them going back last week? They wanted to stay remote, some of them coming back in during phase 2. So I think with this one starting on the 11th, that hopefully may come down, but who knows? But I guess going back to the motion, yeah, I would second the motion for discussion purposes.
I have a question.
that's where I'm at, that we have something on the floor to discuss. So we have a second, so we're going to be, it's an open discussion for our board at this point. Heidi, was there anything?
I have lots of questions.
Well, let's go. We have also, I just want the other board members to know if I hadn't spoken to you, we've also invited Mr. McGowan's management team with Mr. Stevens and Dr. DeBoule. And also, I think the athletic director is here as well. So if there's any questions in that, but I've got to get this out because this is a senior moment for me. There's a big presentation coming up, and that's the band presentation, the winter concert. So stay tuned for that as well. I'm sorry. I just thought of it. Okay, Rhonda?
I just had a question. Do you have that motion wrote down? Because I didn't have that, and I just want to make sure that I have it correctly.
I can get it to you tomorrow morning, if that's, or after the meeting.
Yeah, after the meeting, or even if you repeat it, that way I can get it typed into the,
Okay.
So we know what we're working on.
Initially is to, I move that we accept the recommendations of the Winnacunnet High School administration for the initial back to school. But I also move that the board direct the Winnacunnet High School administration to present a plan for a full reopening of the school at the January board meeting so that the school administrators, staff, students, and parents can be prepared to implement such a plan at a time that the board deems appropriate. So that doesn't mean that it's going to be at the January meeting. It's that we have it, that we have the plan. And everybody knows what that plan is on a full reopening. And That's where I am. For me, we've got to get going on this. And okay, any discussion? Mike, anything?
One of the things that's not clear, and I think that the audience that's out there should be aware of, you're bringing back half the high school, technically, the A through L, then the M through Z. Could you explain what the one density is in the classroom, and also how much of the entire school that's you're able to teach in is being occupied during that particular day?
So the entire school will be used, all the classrooms that we would normally be using during a typical day. As far as the capacity, with a 6-foot spacing in that classroom with just a desk, the capacity will range anywhere from 14 potential seats for 14 students, possibly into some of the bigger spaces, 20 seats. So it's based on the number of spacing that we have. We look to see, even with the 75% of the students coming back, what would that look like? That clearly reduces the number of students that we have in the building. But in some cases, with some of the larger classes, and we do have some classes that have 20 and even 24 students in the labs and science labs, some of the largest classrooms, that even at 75% of 24 students, I'm still going to have more students than I can accommodate based on the spacing needs. So there's several so there's several classes based on different classroom sizes. It can range from anywhere from a total of 20 classes throughout the building up to 40 classes throughout the building that I don't have enough space for.
Okay, thanks.
Heidi, or raise your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first question is, I just want to make sure I understand that there'll be a new survey, I'm assuming, that will go out that will allow families to choose either this option or remaining remote. Is that right?
That was a discussion. Yes, I mean, we do know the original, ones before, but this is a different plan. So talking with my administration, the plan was to get that survey out and try to have people respond by next Wednesday so we can definitely reschedule. And, we don't want to reschedule students, but we can definitely schedule those remote sections with this new plan.
I'm sorry. Can you explain that one more time? I'm unclear on what you just said.
So we want to keep the student schedule in place, but for example, let's say I've got an English class block 3 and I've got 8 remote students in one class. I've got 2 sections of English class block 3, and there's some students that are remote in each of those classes. I would reassign those 8 students during that same block with another teacher, but they would still be in that block that they were originally scheduled. So I'm not going to move students from different blocks.
Okay, but people are still given the option. They're not stuck with whatever they already chose a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we want to be as flexible as possible because
Okay,
we do know things change.
thank you. All right. I don't know if someone else wants to ask a question, or I can just go through my questions. Anyone?
I'll ask a question now, Heidi. We talked about cameras last time. Will the cameras be used? So if I understand it, half the kids are in 2 days in a row, and then the other half comes in. And when those kids are home, are they watching? These are the kids who are doing the hybrid, maybe not the ones who are doing full remote. They're watching the class. They're watching the instruction, the same exact instruction that the kids who are sitting in the classroom are seeing. and that's being done by a camera. Am I correct in that, or am I?
That
Right.
would be, I mean, you're correct that in some cases, so each class will begin with the teacher on the camera, in front of the camera, like I'm sitting here. And then also in front of them, they'll have the students in front of them, along with the students that they see on the screen. So each class would begin like that. The teacher would take attendance of all the students, give an overview of the lesson, and then based on that lesson, there may be some cases that that teacher will continue presenting to everybody. It could be a presentation on the whiteboard or something like that. But there may be other cases where that students will be assigned independent work, and those students may be working on a problem set in the classroom and also at home. In that case, the camera would not be on. So it's going to be based on what the teacher is doing that day. But at the same time, if there is a period of time when the remote students are not on camera, that at the end of the class, all those students would be brought back into the class via the camera. Teacher would see both the remote students and the in-person students, review the lesson, and bring closure to the lesson in preparation for the next day.
So there are no issues with using the cameras then? We are using them as part of the instruction.
It's an instructional tool in the teacher's toolbox to use the cameras on certain parts of the lesson where it works. But again, sometimes in independent work or different group work, it may not be always on. So it's a tool that the teacher can use throughout the instruction.
Thank you.
Leslie, you're sitting there. You have any questions?
Nope, not at this time. Thanks.
Okay.
I have.
Heidi's got some more.
And Principal McGowan, I want to thank you so much for sending us the plan earlier today, because it was just great to read through it and be able to write some questions down rather than just having, being bombarded with it. So I do really appreciate that. But with that being said comes a bunch of questions. So anyway, thank you. So I guess on slide 17, it was talking about lunches. And my question is, will hot lunches be available?
Currently, when I spoke with the food service director, initially, they will be bag lunches. There will be no hot lunches. There will be bag lunches that we will wheel out for the student to pick up before they go into the dining hall. And we will also have bag breakfasts that the students may be able to pick up when they come into the building.
Okay, thank you. Also on page 17, it was talking about Warrior Block as well as lunch. And I'm just curious, if we split everything up by alphabetical order, how large are our Warrior Blocks? What are we doing with the Warrior Block, I guess?
Warrior blocks are typically anywhere from 10 to 12 students. So from a size wise, that's how we originally schedule them. Some of those may have changed, some of the senior Warrior blocks, we may have made some changes. So that's something that if there's an issue with the classroom size. So again, classroom size is based on what class the teacher has, can accommodate anywhere from 12 to 16 students. So if there's an issue with the class size, we may have to relocate that Warrior block based on the number of students in the class.
Okay, thank you. And speaking of the classroom, I'm just curious, were there any plexiglass placed into the classrooms for around the teacher's desk or around the students' desks?
We do have some teachers do have asked, and we can provide, and we have provided plexiglass around the desk. Some teachers have also asked that we have purchased them a 3-sided plexiglass that we can sit on a desk. So if a student has a question, they can come up and sit behind that screen and have that conversation with the teacher.
Okay, thank you. And then I noticed on slide 15 also, you had talked about the classroom cleaning, and each classroom will have a full spray bottles with disinfectant and cleaning rags. I know the question has come up before. I'm curious, one is if it's up to the classroom teacher to determine how their classroom will be cleaned, you know, whether the students are doing it or the teacher's doing it, but with those rags that you speak of, I'm hoping that the same rag used for one class won't be used for the next one, or how will that be handled?
So basically, there will be a bucket in each classroom that once that rag is used, that will go into the bucket, and the facilities will take care of that throughout the day and definitely at the end of the day.
I have more questions, but I want to allow other people on the board to ask theirs. Does anyone else have another question you'd like to ask?
I'll jump back in. Mr. McGowan, how many hours of instruction does this model allow for, and how does that compare to normal situations, either on a weekly basis or however? I want to get a sense for that.
I do have it. So it's a little bit more than what we're doing now with the remote. I believe it's like 5.4, 5.5 hours a day.
That actually, Tony, leads to this question that came up about next week. We are in the calendar that was approved at the beginning of the year, and for this district, because every district's a little bit different, we are just over 1,000 hours. I think it's just over 1,000 hours, and so the issue of this next week and the steps that Hampton took in terms of not having school for students, but having their teachers in for professional development, would actually leave us both short of 180 days and short of 990 hours. And you have to do one of the two. So that's why it's impossible for us to take that same step that Hampton took. So we're just over 1,000 hours is the simple answer to your question.
Okay, so thank you. So, but the standard is 990 or 180 days.
That's correct.
With this current plan, we're over 1,000.
That's correct.
Okay. Another simple question. I think you said 5.4, 5.5 hours per day. What's a normal school day? Is it 6 hours?
It's a little bit under 6.
Okay. Thanks.
Jump in with some more.
Great ahead.
All right. So on slide 18, Principal McGowan, let's see, it talks about opening on January 11th, which I think is really exciting. I have a couple, I guess it's a multi-step question. The first is at the beginning, it talks about taking into consideration community transmission. Obviously, we had approved opening on December 7th, and community transmission seemed too high, so that got delayed. My question is, specifically, come January 11th, when we talk about community transmission, is there a certain percentage of community transmission that we have to maintain? It just seems like we need something more solid to be making these decisions rather than what seems right or what doesn't seem right.
So can I try that, Bill? We haven't actually used community transmission. I wouldn't say community transmission. The standard in the majority of my day that I spend on the phone with our principals talking about individual cases that impact their school is school transmission, not community transmission. And the difficulty of that standard is one individual who is in the, well, depending on what words you want to use, either the right or wrong role, who tests positive, can close a school. Okay, whereas in some cases, depending on who those people are and the way the school's configured and the way cohorts are created, sometimes 5 or 6 cases, as Mr. Rabineau knows from the other board that he sits on, won't. So it's really much more a matter of the tracing of individual cases in the school and who that person, if it happens to be a staff member or a student, who they impact and come in contact with. And one of the things that we've said from the beginning about secondary schools, middle schools, high schools, is that cohorting is much more difficult. So you know in your role that if we have a case if we go to Lincoln Ackerman and we have a case in a second grade or first grade, we cohort very tightly the K through 2. And so we know what we might have to do because of that cohorting. In buildings where we have middle schoolers in, we found that to be much more difficult because of the way middle schoolers move and are regrouped or whatever, which is why you see things like the plan here to limit the number of periods in a day, right? To try to limit that number of contacts so that if you have a positive case, it has less impact than if students came in and went through their traditional high school day. So that was probably too much, and I'm sorry, but that's how we think about these in terms of, you know, when I get a call from a principal that says we have a person XYZ who's tested positive, and we're trying to figure out with DHHS, and I'll say less with given the number of cases in the state, much less with DHHS each day, much more it's on us, much more it's on us. And so we're trying to figure out how much impact does that actually have in the school, and consulting with the nurse, the principal, DHHS, when we can bring them into those discussions, and what exactly we have to do. And sometimes you've seen that's resulted in us at Northampton Elementary, essentially so many different cases having so many different impacts that it leads us to say we need to go remote for some period of time until we see what happens. In other cases, it's a class. In other cases, it's an entire grade level. In other cases, it's a student or a teacher or whatever. It really depends on how the cohorting takes place. I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful, thanks. Yeah, maybe, is it possible that we could make that adjustment on the slides or on the presentation? Because on it, it says the 3 areas that we're focused on, and instead of it saying community transmission, it could say school transmission.
We will change that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. And actually, on that same note, it did say on slide 16, it was talking about the nurses who need to be notified if someone in the school community has a positive case of COVID-19. So I thought, or I was under the impression that DHHS would automatically reach out to our school nurses. So we are relying heavily on our community and on our school families to let our nurses know. Is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
So DHHS is not doing that.
I can think of, and Dr. Arkelian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I can think of less than a handful of cases in our school districts where we've actually received that information from DHHS. In the vast majority of those cases, we're calling them because we get notified by a family. One of the things that we've emphasized to families throughout the SAU is this entire model, no matter what school you're in and no matter what the specifics of the model are, is highly dependent on you keeping kids home when they're sick and you telling us the truth. And if those 2 things don't happen, it fails. And we've had that experience. And a number of other school districts have had similar experiences.
Thanks for clarifying that. Does anyone else want another turn at asking some questions?
You're on a roll.
Okay, I'll keep going, but please, I don't want to hog the time. So, okay, let's see. Another question I had. Oh yeah, is there any funding to offer testing to our staff or our students?
Testing being COVID testing?
Yes.
That I'm not sure of.
I can speak to that. So there isn't specific funding for that purpose. However, Winnacunnet has received ESSER funds as well as supplemental public school response funds. However, to bring a company on site to conduct testing would be cost prohibitive to do a regular testing, whether that's daily, weekly, whatever the the time frame would be. That is something that we had looked at initially when we were exploring reopening plans, but is not something that we pursued.
Okay, thanks. I noticed that Vermont offered that, and in one of their school districts, it was, I don't know, well over 300 staff members who opted to just get tested, and whether they were asymptomatic or symptomatic. So I was just curious if we had any funding allowed for that.
Yeah, Massachusetts has a testing program for schools that they're rolling out as well.
And we did provide to our various building leaderships the testing site information to disseminate to our staff, because tests, at least with our health insurance, tests are free for our employees, and I think many insurance policies do cover tests. So we certainly encourage our staff to get tested, but obviously our students are not covered. They would be under their family plans. So it's something that we certainly encourage testing, but to bring testing on site would really have to be a state level initiative, similar to Massachusetts, where the state is rolling out testing to schools, but it's not something that we looked at locally. So.
Thanks. All right, another question on slide 13. It's just talking about the safety of the students as they're entering the building, remaining socially distanced. I know for me, when I'm at the grocery store, I love that they have the lines in the checkout line to keep everybody 6 feet apart. I'm curious if you guys have thought about putting any tape outside those entrances to help the students just realize this is where I should be standing.
We did initially, and we can put them back down. So students know where to stand, especially as they come in the building and in the entry lobby there.
Excellent, thanks.
I have a question, and I don't know if there's an answer. I think we know what to do to keep the kids safe. The kids wear the masks. I think Mr. McGowan, you mentioned they're good about that. We can clean. I really like that you talked about ramping up the HVAC system. I think in our little bubble there at the school, it's not that little, but we'll call it that, we can make it safe if we all do the right thing. And I'm convinced that we have, these are great questions, but I'm convinced we can do the right thing and keep our kids safe. My question is, how do we keep everybody else safe? How do we trust people to do the right thing outside of school? And I point to, look at the NBA, their bubble was very successful. It can be done. And I've read a few things about transmission rates in schools I think they're lower, and it's because they're doing these things. Is there any sort of, I don't know, education piece or just ongoing discussions, community forums, anything to keep the awareness level up that this thing isn't over yet? That's just occurred to me that we can control a lot of these aspects, but there are things that are just out of our control.
Just to answer, or to make a comment about what Tony was just saying. We had all the protocols in place this fall for all the athletes, and there was, to the best of my knowledge, and also in talking to our athletic director, that there were no cases, no positives, other than students that had played outside of the NHIAA or outside of Winnacunnet High School. So our plans, I think, Tony, are great, because all the athletes that we had in the fall, there were no cases, no positives, and the protocols were, I would say, correct. And I agree with you that this is a small bubble, but the bubble is working. And thank you for bringing that up, Tony.
And I sorry for asking questions that don't really have clear answers, but it was just kind of leading to, I'd like the community forums, if there's a way to kind of get back to that, just to keep it front and center in everyone's mind. But maybe that's for a different topic.
No, one of the things that I had discussed is that, the week before we actually start, January 11th, have a forum or a webinar for both parents and students as far as what the expectations are and what the next steps and how we can all work together to maintain the safety of everyone.
Bill, I think that's a great idea. I think one of the things that, sitting here listening to it too, is maybe the week before, do a video walkthrough. Do you know what I mean? So show the parents, the students, what to expect when they come in. So you be a student, walk in the front door, you're going to get tested or whatever, screened, show them that the hallways, that kind of thing, maybe go into a couple of different classrooms. Same thing with the cafeteria, so that they actually can visualize it. I think that might put some of them at ease.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. Lupini, was there anything else on the plans? You've worked tirelessly on this, as well as Mr. McGowan, and there's several questions that have been asked. Is there something else that we should ask?
Wow, I didn't think that's what you were going to ask me.
I'm sorry.
Not that I know of. I want to make sure that issue of the possibility of remote classes was pointed out. I think Bill also talked about remote support centers for kids who are on remote or happen to be on the remote days of their hybrid. Those kinds of pieces. I don't think so. There wasn't a question about transportation, but I think the bus ridership will work. The numbers are small enough to begin with that I don't think we have the challenge in this district that we have in some others with bus ridership. So no, I don't think so.
I'd just like to say thank you for this plan. I think it is a better plan than what we had in place, but by taking into so many suggestions from everybody and whatnot, I just want to say thank you to you for putting this forward. It shows a lot of thought, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, a goal, and again, I thank everybody for providing that feedback and working with us.
Takes a village, as we say.
Mr. Marsh, I'm not sure whether at this point, before you go to public comment on the plan, specific to the plan, whether you wanted to hear from Mr. Abood and possibly open it up to public comment on either item, but it's really your pleasure as to what you'd like to do here.
Was there something from Mr. Abood that, Mr. McGowan, was there something from Mr. Abood on this plan, or?
Not in the reopening plan, but athletics just started this week. So if there's any questions around that, I do know that he sent the protocols earlier. The one thing that changed that the wrestlers will be required to wear masks. So I think just to provide an update as far as his conversations with the NHIAA and his communication with other Division I schools as far as what is happening and how we're moving forward, I think would be beneficial.
I'd like to hear from him myself.
Rhonda, can we bring him in? Oh, here he is.
I think I'm in. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, am I in? Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess just a quick update. We started the other day, Monday, we started with winter sports. We had basketball in the gym, hockey was at Jackson Landing and rinks at Exeter. Wrestling came in. Alpine and Nordic skiing both did some workouts this week. We've had a number of kids in and out of the building, and after 3 days, everything has gone really well. The kids have been, I would say, beyond happy to be back doing things, to be around other kids. Our coaches have been enthusiastic. We've had strength and conditioning workouts going on in the weight room. And it's not, it doesn't look the same as it does every year. Everybody's wearing a mask and doing what they can do, doing their part. But, the numbers of kids who registered and who showed up this week and the overall enthusiasm is, I would say, the highest that I've seen it. In terms of just kids being able to do something and to be active and to be social. Fall sports ended maybe a month or so ago, a little more than that, depending on what sport you played. And, the kids were back to basically screen time. And so I think them being here and being in the building and being active has been a real blessing for everybody. So that's kind of just the quick update. We have, schedules planned. Even the sports that right now don't have games or meets, like we can't run indoor track right now because there is no indoor track in the state to run a meet at. But our coaches are still showing up every day, and a number of kids are still showing up, and they're doing a running and a workout club, and they're still being active. And we're going to offer the same to our swim team. Right now, we don't have a pool to swim in. We typically swim at Phillips Exeter, and they're completely closed. Some of the other local pools, we haven't been able to secure any practice time, but we've offered that the swim team after Christmas, they can come in and do dry land workouts, and with the hopes that maybe a pool would open up and we can maybe compete in a couple of, dual meets or something. So we're going. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any questions about what we're doing or anything like that.
Thanks, Aaron. I think it's great that the numbers are up and the kids are getting out and getting the exercise and the socialization. I think it's very important. I think most students and parents feel the same way. So keep it up. Enjoy it. Thanks.
Aaron, I have a question for you. It may just be a matter of my eyes drawn to it, but I see in a number of newspapers that two things. School districts are making different choices about running some sports and not some others.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, that some schools are struggling because of their numbers. They've moved to remote. Some number of places that were in person have moved to remote, and they've put their athletics on hold. I saw that happen in Concord just this week, where things appear to have been put completely on hold. And so I'm wondering how that's impacting you as you think about schedules and things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we meet, Division I athletic directors meet at least once, sometimes twice a week. And, you know, the Concord situation, they're planning to restart. They did have to, they went on hold. But in terms of scheduling with say basketball and some of the more local sports, we're keeping it as local as possible. So for example, right now our basketball schedule includes Portsmouth, Exeter, Dover, Spalding, and then maybe one of the Manchester teams. So we're not looking to go you know, that far in terms of regular season play. Ice hockey, we're in with Oyster River, St. Thomas, Portsmouth, Spalding, those schools that are more local to the Seacoast for our regular season. It'll be a similar schedule to the fall. I mean, of course, alpine ski, you can't stay within 20 miles, you know, so some of those sports they're going to be traveling, but we're offering the same type of transportation waivers, the same type of options to parents if they should elect to not take a bus, have their son or daughter take a bus, they can drive them. We're going to offer that again. We're not going to mandate the bus. So with those popular sports, those contact sports, even wrestling, we're looking to keep it pretty local for regular season play. And then, you know, once we get to February and early March, we'll look at it like we did in the fall, and we'll look at the tournament setup again, and you know, hope that things have improved, and hope that we've been successful through the winter season, and hopefully playing tournaments again. But go ahead.
And some of those districts are only playing varsity. Is that what I heard today? Dover, for example, I think I heard is only playing varsity.
Right now, around us, I believe Dover is a varsity only, just like they were in the fall. But you know, your Exeter's, Portsmouth, Spalding, they're all looking to play sub-varsity as well. For us in the winter, that really only comes into play with basketball. You know, we don't have sub-varsity hockey. We only have one wrestling team. Alpine, Nordic ski, swim, they're all just varsity sports. So we don't have as many sub-varsity sports. Really, it's basketball. And for us, I feel that it's important that we offer those sub-varsity sports. I mean, we had over 60 kids at the boys basketball tryouts over the last 3 days. So for us to be able to offer three levels, freshman, JV, and varsity, I think that's important. And we'll keep those schedules local as well. We're gonna just kind of play the same teams in all three levels for basketball.
I have one more question, if I might, Mr. Marsh. So I think what was said earlier in this set of presentations is that where we saw some infections that came into the school environment, or that we saw in students, were through outside sports activities. And I did see that in a couple cases, some schools have taken the stance, I don't know whether I agree with it or not, but they've taken the stance that if you're going to play sports for us, you're not going to play AAU, or you're not going to play this particular other outside activity. Have you run across that, and where do we stand on that?
Yeah, we have. People are real torn on that. And right now, our stance right now is that if you're playing one of the contact sports, basketball, hockey, wrestling, and you do participate, a lot of our basketball players, they'll play, say, Seacoast United soccer or something like that. We will allow them to practice with those teams as long as they don't conflict with the high school team. But right now we're saying no to them competing with those other teams in, say, a tournament or a game or something like that. I felt like that was a compromise. I felt like, you know, people pay a lot of money to play in those AAU leagues. And a lot of times, you know, if you look at the winter season, while you're in season for basketball, like say soccer, they're kind of training and practicing to play in their club season, which would be then in the spring. So we don't want our athletes to lose out on that opportunity to, say, play on their spring team or have to choose. So we felt that, I think, you know, let them practice, but say no to those tournaments and things right now, and just commit to playing contests with the high school team for right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for our athletic director? Nice looking tree.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Let's see. Is the associate principal, he was going to say something about any of the clubs and activities. Is he available? Mr. McGowan?
Bill, you're muted.
I believe he's available. I haven't looked to see.
Yes, he's here, Bill.
If he's there, can he raise his hand so I can find him and bring him over? Got it. Thank you.
Hi, folks.
I just want to ask, there's a lot of clubs, a lot of activities, and what types of clubs are available for students? That's another question that parents are asking. And when are they meeting? Obviously scheduled or whatever, but what type of activities are available?
So all of our advisors for our clubs and extracurricular activities have been in contact with their kids since the start of the school year. Most are having a lot of virtual meetings. Probably beginning of October, I asked each club leader to present a plan to me where they would, if they thought it was appropriate for their group, to submit a plan to me on coming into the school, how they properly social distance, abide by CDC and DHHS guidelines, work with our nurses to meet in person for those clubs when it was appropriate for that club. We've had some clubs do that. We've had some clubs stay remote. We've had more clubs in the past few weeks really look to start doing that after the new year. We've hosted 2 math meets inside of Winnacunnet High School, in which our math team won the first math meet of the year. So our advisors have been in contact since the start of the school year, and honestly, some were in contact with these kids all throughout the summer, just because it was a real connection point for them at the end of last year, and they stayed with it over the summertime. And they're looking to try to meet with these kids in person more and more as we get back to school in January.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the plan? If we can get back to that, the area and the motions.
Henry, I have a quick question. Based on your motion, how would you like to break it up into 2 motions? One, to adopt the plan, and the second is to request the administration to bring a full plan in January.
Okay, Tony has already seconded the second motion.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and if there is someone to accept the first motion to accept the plan, or did we have that from Leslie?
I think you had that from me.
Okay, so it has been accepted. Both areas have been accepted, Mike. But thank you for clarifying that.
Clarification. Thank you.
That delineation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask to clarify each of those motions individually because somehow I've got it convoluted as one.
Okay.
So I feel it's important that people understand what the 2 different motions are because I know I'm confused.
Okay, the first motion is to accept the plan presented by Mr. McGowan. And the second plan is the one I read to you.
Okay, the one you read.
The second motion.
Combination?
Pardon?
Okay. Would you mind reading the second motion separately by itself?
Okay, let me see. I think I had it here. Second. Okay, that one I had typed up here. I move that the board, the Winnacunnet School Board, direct the Winnacunnet High School administration to present a plan for a full reopening of the school at the January board meeting, so that the school administrators, staff.
Okay, hang on a minute. That's where I feel like I'm getting mixed up into two different ones.
Okay.
Motion to, I'm sorry, Henry. I just, it's a
Oh,
lot.
right ahead. I'm just as
Motion to-
dumb as I look. Go ahead.
Motion to direct the high school administration to present a plan for a full reopening
Of the
on
school,
January 11th.
no, the January board meeting,
Okay,
so that the school administrators, staff, students, and parents can be prepared to implement such a plan at a time that the Winnacunnet School Board deems appropriate. So after the plan, when the board feels it's time to implement that second plan, we have a plan to go to.
okay. And you say that you made that motion, and who provided the second on that?
Leslie?
Okay,
Oh, excuse me, Tony.
Henry, just as a clarification, we're adopting and not accepting the plan?
Pardon?
We're
That's,
adopting and not
yes.
accepting the plan.
pardon, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
We're actually adopting the plan, not just accepting it, correct?
At this meeting, yes. That's the first plan, yes. The one that was presented by Mr. McGowan. Is it the wish of the board to vote, or do you want to bring in public comment at this time?
I would say since the motion's out there and we have a second, that we should vote on it.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Rhonda.
which one are we voting on?
The first one, to accept Mr. McGowan's plan.
Okay, and that was done by Henry, and who was the second on that one?
Leslie.
Okay,
Question. We've made the motion. It's been seconded. Then we have discussion. So we had discussion. Are we not then listening? Are we not taking public comment on that? We're doing it and then the public comment will be after the fact? I guess I'm confused. Henry, you're muted.
That's what I understand from Mike's statement a moment ago. Because it is a motion, it's been seconded.
I want to say, I don't think that's what we would recommend. I think we would recommend that you take public comment on the issue, on the presentation and all. You've made your motion and whatever, and then hearing public comment. And again, it's public comment, not necessarily public question and answer, but public comment, that you reserve your vote for after that period. That's the way we've normally done it.
That was my assumption.
Okay,
In that vein.
great. I agree with
Okay.
that.
Okay, thank you, Mike, to reconsider. At this time, are we ready for? Pardon, go ahead, Tony.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, that's what has been tripping me up, is the order of things, so thank you, that.
Okay, that's fine. So if at this time we can go to public comment? Is that
And at this
correct?
time, Henry, it's agreed that it is public comment. It's not a discussion, it's comment.
It's just comments on. Let me get
Just
to,
on this reentry plan.
this is public comment, in school plan only.
Got it. And it's
That's continuing business B.
And I think, Rhonda, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think like last month and in our other meetings, you're prepared to show what public comment looks like, which I think defines all of that and timeframes and those kinds of things.
Correct.
Yes.
So if you're ready for that, Henry, I can go ahead and do that now.
Okay, we're fine.
I am going to share my screen. And just reminding everybody that this comment is on the agenda item for in-person school plan only. That will allow a maximum of 15 minutes for public comment. The board can vote to, a board vote is required to extend the 15 minutes, 3 minutes or less per individual. Public comments on other agenda items or upon any other matter of public concern directly relating to the district's school policies, programs, and operations will be heard under a separate public comment that is scheduled for later in the meeting. Comments including complaints regarding individual employees or individual students be directed to the superintendent in accord with the complaint and grievance resolution process set forth in school board policies KE and/or KEB. Members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals in official matters. Thus, in most instances, any board response will be deferred pending consideration by the full board. The board desires that all speakers strive to adhere to ordinary norms of decorum and civility. And then if the board is ready, I will take public comment from the attendees. And if you want to make a comment, you need to do the raise your hand feature in the Zoom. That'll promote you to the top of the list so that I can see that you have a comment. When we bring you in and give you permission to speak, we just need you to clearly state your name, your address, and your affiliation with Winnacunnet High School. The first person I see is somebody by the name of Jennifer Waddell. Ms. Waddell, if you could just clarify that that is you that's going to be speaking and your address and affiliation with the school, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Jennifer Waddell. My address is 33 Vano Island in Northampton. And my affiliation with the school is that I have a son who's a senior and also a daughter that graduated in 19. I just want to thank the administration for bringing a plan to the table. I know it was a lot of work that went into it. And I'm really just asking that the school board please vote for it. The kids have been out of school for 9 months. They are desperate to go back. I know so many of them are disappointed that this past month that didn't happen. And we just can't waste any more time. It's gonna be at a year and they are anxious to go back. I'm confident that the school can provide a safe environment for them. I have a daughter who is in the SAU 90. They are doing a great job with COVID, the screening, the safety. There are cases, they're still in the hybrid model. I know it can be done. So again, thank you for the plan and I please ask that you vote for it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else right now? I do not see anyone else with their hand raised. I do see someone. Andrew Wallace, if you could please state your name, address, and affiliation with the school.
Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Wallace. I am a teacher at Winnacunnet High School, and I'm the president of Synchronous Education Association. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your work on behalf of students and staff in SAU 21. First, we want to recognize that everyone, our students, our communities, and the teachers, staff, and administration are all struggling right now in different ways during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's more important than ever to empathize with one another and to support one another. We are all affected by this virus, and we see the tremendous courage and care in our community as a result. Thank you all for your hard work and fortitude over these past months. The hours of preparation and work that you put into your teaching and into your parenting do not go unnoticed. When it comes to the plans for in-person learning, teachers and staff at Winnacunnet High School are excited about the prospect of returning to face-to-face instruction with our students. The work we do remotely is incredibly difficult and rewarding, but nothing can replace the value in what our teachers can do in person. We all want to see our students flourish. Keep in mind, the teachers and staff don't make the plans, but regardless of what's planned, we're committed to providing meaningful learning opportunities for students. Please know that we had planned to be face-to-face for the past few weeks, if not for the skyrocketing infections in the school and in the community. There are no easy answers in planning our return to school. It goes without saying that school will look much different under the circumstances. Teachers and staff are prepared to meet this challenge by utilizing a variety of educational tools and practices to deliver a high-quality experience that meets the academic and social emotional needs of our students. As professionals, teachers are best suited to make choices about their curriculum and the method of instruction. Especially considering the different subject areas, there is no one-size-fits-all teaching practice that solves every challenge for teachers and students in a hybrid model. But with a combination of approaches and planning, we can continue our success this year and maintain health and safety for all. There are no easy answers in deciding when to go back to school either. As always, the health and safety of our students, families, and staff continue to be our top priority. The staggering daily numbers of new COVID cases continue to shatter records in New Hampshire. Regardless of how desperately we want to be done with this illness, COVID-19 is not done with us. So we have to be vigilant about the necessary safety protocols that must be followed at Winnacunnet and in our communities. These protocols will work if followed at WHS to keep staff and students safe, but as we know, that's not the whole story. We understand now that all of our actions in the community will affect the number of infections in schools, especially during the holiday season. If we all wear masks, socially distance, get timely testing, and quarantine when needed, it will greatly increase our students' chances of a return to in-person learning. We all have a role to play, and our students' success depends on our commitment to safety in our community. We mean it when we say we are all in this together. The situation is incredibly difficult for all of us. We want you to know that we understand your concerns and we share your hopes and excitement for the future. Despite the challenges, teachers and staff and parents and students are all a part of the solution, and we're ready to do what's needed. We're in awe of the resilience that our schools and community have continually displayed this year, and we look forward to our continued success together in SAU 21. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.
At this time, I do not see any other hands raised for public comment on this plan.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. As soon as I said that, somebody raised their hand. Lynn Rademacher, I believe is the name. I'm with, Lynn, it looks like I need to promote you in as a panelist because you're using an older version. Hello? If you could just unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. My name is Lynn Rademacher. I live at 18 Falcone Circle in Hampton, New Hampshire. I had a 2017 graduate of Winnacunnet, 2019 graduate of Winnacunnet, current junior at the high school, and one more to come along, maybe at this point. I wanted to thank everybody for the effort that you put forth in providing a plan. I echo what Jen Waddell just mentioned. We urge the board who we elected to represent our interests to please vote for this plan. The kids are desperate. Much of the fear mongering that you hear from the union, from certain board members is just not, it's not representative of what the majority of the district or the community wants for kids. We really need this plan. It's more important than ever. And do know that the rest of the community is open and flourishing and surviving and managing COVID and managing life. So please vote for the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there anyone else, Rhonda, that you see?
Yes, I see somebody by the name of James S.
Yes, this is James Sununu, 12 Evergreen Drive in Northampton. I have two students, a junior and a sophomore at Winnacunnet. Like the other parent who previously spoke, I want to thank the administration for coming back with this revised plan, which I believe is a huge improvement over what was previously proposed. I think it provides much better opportunities for the kids to be engaged. So thank you very much for doing that. I certainly urge the board to vote to approve this plan as presented. And I also urge you to vote to have a full reopening plan presented in January as moved by Mr. Marsh, so that when the time comes, it's ready to go and that we're not stuck waiting as a community for a plan to be formulated. I think that is critical to plan for now. and critical to have for when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sununu.
I have somebody by the name of Trish. There's no last name given, so Trish, can you please just provide your first and last name as well as your address?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Trish Wheeler, and 2 Downer Drive in Hampton. I have a sophomore at Winnacunnet currently, and I have a 2020 graduate. So first off, I have to say thank you so much. I mean, that plan was so thorough. The presentation was great. I mean, just seeing down to the details, so appreciate it. So thank you. I commend you, and I appreciate the administration and all the teachers and all their efforts. The one thing that I would just like to ask of the board is to make sure that they have some input if this gets canceled 2 days before it's supposed to be implemented, because the last plan got nixed, even though the teachers were even unaware that it was even going to be happening. They didn't even know that that was being implemented. There were teachers that had no idea. There were students that actually learned from, because the parents hadn't read the email, from teachers that were like, I guess we're not going back. So I think there needs to be better logistics that are covered and make sure that the students are put first. 75% of the students want to go back. And I think just keep that in mind when you're voting. And just to make sure if we end up not being able to go back, that that's discussed by the school board as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, Mr. Marsh, I do not see anyone else with their hand raised. So we'll close this public comment until later in the meeting.
Okay, the public comment will come back in area 6 of our regular meeting here. We do have a couple motions, and we can call for the first motion is to accept the plan by Mr. McGowan. Seems like the parents were in favor as well, and thank you, Mr. McGowan, for your plan, and Dr. Pliny for all your work in the plan as well. Can we call, Rhonda, can you call the roll call on the vote?
Sorry. When we jump the motions, I've lost them. So that was actually Henry on the first one, and that was seconded by Leslie for the plan. I'm sorry. Heidi Terracina,
Yes, I approve it.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded and that vote passed.
Thank you to everyone. And thank you again to Dr. Lupini and Mr. McGowan for the plan. Thank you. And the second motion was Tony seconded that as well. I think that I made the motion and Tony, that was the second. And that was to have a plan at our January meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Heidi Terracina,
Yes.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded as well.
Thank you. Before we go on, we do have a coming up on, let's see, we have a PEDCOM meeting on January 13th. If people want to get back to me, that's the committee meeting, excuse me. The final hearing is the 14th. If you would like to have a work session on that after that meeting usually lasts about 15 minutes. So if there is any interest, if you get back to me and I can get to the SAU office to have a Zoom, because that will be a Zoom meeting. That's the public hearing. And everyone is going to be there. and we just have a work session. I'd like to think that we could probably have at least a couple meetings a month. We've got a lot of things that are going on. So that's just something to think about. If there's something, get back to me. And we're going to go to the next is the finance report. And before we get to the finance report, I want to thank Matt for all of his work working on the budgets, the number of meetings that he has. And I don't see that he has to come to all the meetings that we have. I think that in previous years at times, we've looked at his report. His reports are fantastic. And Matt, it's time for you again. Show us your stuff.
Thank you, Henry. So we've attached 2 financial reports that are in board docs for review. The first of which is the fiscal year-to-date expenditure report. And the second is the fiscal year-to-date revenue report. There are no significant variances to report on from last month. However, I do want to address a few items related to revenue. So the first one relates to proposed legislation at the state level. As you're aware, the state provides adequacy aid using a formula that is based on a calculation of the cost that the state deems is enough to provide for an adequate education. So that formula includes a base per pupil rate of just under $3,800 per student. So, and that's based on average daily membership, ADM, or, so you're looking at a per person rate of $3,800. And then there's an additional rate, supplemental, for various certain student groups. That includes just under $1,900 for students on free and reduced price meal eligibility, just over $2,000 for special education students who are on an individualized educational plan, an IEP, $740 for students who are English language learners, ELL, who are receiving English language instruction. Similarly, $740 for any 3rd grade pupil whose achievement scores are for reading are below the proficiency level, the state's proficiency level. So when looking at that adequate education aid, that's funded via the statewide education property tax. So those are swept taxes. And each town is responsible for collecting those swept taxes. So when looking at that state tax, some towns cover the entire cost of the adequacy aid with the local collection of the swept taxes. So we actually have 2 towns within Winnacunnet that cover that entire cost. And I believe there's approximately 18% of towns statewide that fall into this group. So even though it is a statewide tax, those towns fund the adequacy aid entirely through local assessment and actually collect more swept funds than is needed for the adequacy aid. So currently, the town is allowed to keep that differential, the local taxes that they collect for adequacy aid, so that those excess funds. So I'm getting around to the new legislation. So the new legislation would require those towns to return the excess funds to the state, and then those funds would be reallocated to other towns. So this is similar to the donor town model. Now, I will say it's undetermined whether it will pass. However, it does appear that there is some fairly wide or broad bipartisan support. And this is due to the fact that it would benefit a large number of towns, roughly 78%, versus the towns that would be returning the funds to the state and would be negatively affected. So we are monitoring this proposed legislation as it potentially could have an impact on revenue here at Winnacunnet. So the second revenue item I want to address is grant funding. So as you know, Winnacunnet did receive elementary and secondary school emergency relief, those ESSER funds, back in May of 2020, and that was part of the CARES federal stimulus package. Winnacunnet received $144,719 through this funding source. So in addition to those funds, the state of New Hampshire is providing additional funding via the Supplemental Public School Response Fund. And that's a total of $45 million across the entire state, and does come from the CARES Act as well. And that's designed to provide relief and support for unanticipated costs associated with the safe, opening and operation of schools during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that represents $200 per student of funding. As such, Winnacunnet did receive $214,400 from that funding source. So these funds are treated as offsetting revenue, and we are expected to document usage of the application of these monies. So to qualify, these funds can be applied to any expenditures incurred between March 1st of 2020 and December 30th of 2020. And the expenditures need to be COVID-19 related and cannot be, items that were previously budgeted or covered by a different grant. I will note that a significant portion of these expenditures are for costs we originally received approval for FEMA reimbursement, but they subsequently rescinded that funding source when they declared that schools would be ineligible for funding, as well as other necessary costs that did not qualify for FEMA or were incurred, after or later in the year. So I have attached a list of every activity that we've used those funds for that encompass the $214,000 on board docs, and I'll just briefly run through some of those items. These include software such as our Zoom subscription, Screencastify. We purchased mobile hotspots for students, disinfecting wipes, hand sanitizer, spray bottles, terry cloth towels. We had tents for our lunch program to disseminate lunches through the spring and summer. We have, respirator kits, electrostatic sprayers to disinfect our facilities, sneeze guards, plexiglass, larger plexiglass guards, face shields, all types of PPE when it comes to, gloves, masks, sanitizers, dampers for our HVAC system, as well as the high grade MERV filters. We have some technology purchases as far as tablets and monitors, microphones, and document cameras. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regard to the finance report or revenue sources at this point.
Just a quick note, Matt. We've had like 120 people on this Zoom, and in the media, it hasn't been really noted on the work that was done. And if you can, because we're in a new budget cycle, that how much money did we actually return to the towns out of Winnacunnet? That was well over $1 million. And, you know, the SAU office, your office, ought to take some credit for hopefully reducing some taxes for some of the folks here. If you could go back over that again, please.
Yeah, so this past spring, obviously, when we went to an emergency remote environment, we did recognize some significant savings when it came to, you know, items such as, you know, substitute teachers, extracurricular stipends, heating, electricity, you know, a full array of costs. So we took the stance that we understood that our community was suffering, that our towns would be experiencing declines in tax revenue, our families would be financially struggling in many instances. So we wanted to return as much funds to the town as possible to try to alleviate that in as much as we could. So at the end of the fiscal year 2020, so that's 2019, 2020, ending June 30th, we did return $1.2 million, which is returned to the town to offset assessment in our member communities. You know, similarly, you know, when we look at this year's budget, if we do have any funds that are not utilized, you know, this year, we would not be looking to spend those funds on any new projects or initiatives. We would look to return the maximum number of funds to our communities because, again, we are in an economic crisis. We took great care through this budget process to minimize the budget impacts. The budget that we did that the school board proposed and the budget committee approved was essentially level funded. It was a 0.66% increase. You know, we took great care to not bring forth any new investment, any new initiatives, while still maintaining our high level of programming and to provide for the proper learning experience for our students. So we hope that you know, and finally I will say that we are also not bringing forth any additional warrant articles outside of our normal HVAC replacement warrant article. We do need to continue with that, but we're not looking to fund any of our expendable trusts or and we've deferred a roofing project due to the economic crisis. So we are taking every step possible or necessary to minimize costs to our communities while still maintaining a high standard for our students.
Matt. Moving on, new business. Mr. McGowan, would you like to go over the donations?
We have one donation that we received, and it was over $2,800 worth of turkeys that we received from Gather, New Hampshire. And those turkeys were used in our annual Thanksgiving basket that we provide to families in need throughout the community. Many thanks go out to the guidance department that has organized this for the last several years. And through this process, we distributed 84 Thanksgiving baskets to families in the community. So, you know, a donation that was definitely worthwhile for activity that we do that the whole community, Winnacunnet staff, community members, students contribute. So it's a yearly activity that provides benefits to the community. So thank you for all those that contributed and worked with us to distribute those baskets.
Thank you. Moving on to new business policies. This is a first read.
I'm sorry, that you do need a motion to accept that donation?
Yeah.
Sure.
Make a motion that we
We,
accept.
we already have them, correct? I mean, they've already been given out. The
But it's
donation.
due to the amount, you gotta have it on record that you guys, authorized it, because there's, Matt, can you explain that a little more?
Yeah,
No, that's fine. We'll just make a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the donations from Gather. Did we do the Hampton American Legion too and Toby Merrill, or just that one, just the Gather?
They're all lumped together as one total, is my understanding.
Okay, so I make a motion to accept the donations in the estimated value of $29.80 for Thanksgiving baskets.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
was somebody, who's that, Mike?
Heidi Terracina,
Yes.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Okay, the next is the awarding of the bid. We've been discussing this for at least 2 years. Is there a motion to accept the bid?
Henry, would you like me to,
There were three bids in here, and Matt, you had a recommendation.
yes, so this is the bid process for the proposed auditorium speaker system purchase. We did send bids to 6 vendors, and 3 attended the walkthrough and submitted bids. So the administration is recommending award of bid to CCS Presentation Systems in the amount of $74,781, based on the quality of the submitted equipment, design, and references. Funding for this purchase is from the approved 2020-2021 warrant article, which was in the amount of $85,000. So this is just over $10,000 under budget.
I make a motion to award the auditorium speaker bid to CCS Presentation Systems in the amount of $74,781.
I second that.
Are you ready for a roll call?
Yes.
Heidi Terracina,
Yes.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Matt, there's another bid.
Thank you. Yes, so similarly, the bid process is also concluded for the proposed Media Lab computer purchase. Bids were sent to 9 vendors and 4 submitted bids. And we are recommending award of bid to Howard Technology in the amount of $23,420. I'll also note that funding for the purchase is from the 2020-2021 operating budget. And we did budget $32,000. So this is roughly $8,500 under budget.
Henry, I'll make that recommendation to award the Media Lab computer contract to Howard Technology in the amount of $23,420.
Second.
Okay. Roddy, roll call.
Heidi Terracina,
Yes.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else, Matt? Nothing, no other bids, correct? No other? Okay, if we move on to number 6, and that's public comment is being opened again, and that's on any of the agenda items other than the in-school plan.
Do you want me to?
Yes, if there's any other public comment.
I don't see any.
Okay, moving on. The next item is personnel nominations, retirements. Do we go into executive session on this?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney? Okay, and I would entertain a motion to go into non-public.
I'll make that motion to go into the non-public.
Thank you, Mike. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Rhonda, the roll call?
Heidi Terracina,
Yes.
Henry Marsh,
Yes.
Leslie LaFond,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Oops, yes.
and Tony Delano.
Yes.
Thank you. If the host would put us into executive session? Oh, excuse me, Dr. Lupini?
David, do you want to walk us through what we're going to do?
Sure. I think we've all been through this, at least on the panel before. I've sent you an invite to another meeting for the school board to be in non-public session. Just a note for the attendees, we will keep this meeting open and we'll be back shortly after non-public. So I'll see the rest of you there.
We always lose Henry.
We need to start leaving breadcrumbs for him.
I think so. Yeah.
You're on mute, Rhonda.
Henry's here now. Rhonda.
So we need Tony.
He's here as well.
So you need a motion to come out of non-public.
Yep.
I make a motion that we come out of non-public.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Heidi,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Mike Rabideau,
Yes.
and Tony.
Yes.
Okay, I have that vote recorded.
I'll make a motion to, do you want us to go right through to those?
That would be great. Thank you.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Christine Edgar effective December 4th, 2020, and thank her for her years of service.
I second that.
Thank you.
Heidi,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Tony.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Make a motion to accept the retirement of Deborah Page effective June 30th, 2021. Again, thanking her for her service. Sorry.
All right, I'll second that.
Heidi,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Tony.
Yes.
Also, there was a stipend that was mentioned.
That's for Sally. For the next one, isn't it?
Oh, the next one? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. The next one, I make a motion to accept the retirement of Sally Bracco effective June 30th, 21. Again, with gratitude for her 17 years of service and by giving her and accepting and recommending the stipend as laid out.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got the names mixed up. Heidi,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Tony.
Yes.
All right, I have that vote recorded.
Make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation of Michael McCarron for the Spanish teacher position for the remainder of the 2021 school year.
Second that.
Heidi,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Tony.
Yes.
Have that vote recorded.
Okay, we have the next meeting dates. And tomorrow is the joint board meeting. And that is, and let's see, what's it, January 5th is a operations committee meeting. And Wednesday, the 13th is joint policy meeting. Now, the joint policy meeting, that's not the policies that we're looking at today. Is that correct? That's a new set.
That will be the next group.
Next group coming in. Okay. And then for our board, January 14th is the budget hearing and final review. Usually that's a 15-minute meeting, if that. And then our next meeting is January 20th. And again, before we adjourn, I want to thank Dr. Lupini for everything and the next adventure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lupini, and Merry Christmas to everyone. Enjoy your
Merry
holidays.
Christmas. Happy New Year's. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you. Same
Thank
to all
Oh,
of you.
yeah, see you tomorrow night. So much for Merry Christmas. Yeah, see you tomorrow, guys.
Yep.
Hey, we
Thanks.
need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I think everybody's in favor of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everybody. All right.